Right, the recording button started. So to everybody that's joined us today, it's really nice to have you with us. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving up some time on a Wednesday afternoon, and it's sort of lunchtime, and I trust that you've got a cup of coffee or soup or something like that. A couple of people that I was talking to are just saying that it is very cold. It's flipping cold. And even I am experiencing a bit of cold where I am, and I'm in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's normally quite tropical here, but today is obviously they talk about global warming. I think this is global cooling for everybody here. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about a subject that is very, very close to the occupational health and safety industry at the moment. And this whole question of training and accredited training and approved training and certified training and registered training and all of those things that go hand in hand with being a training establishment. I'm going to be talking about things such as, in the absence of certain mechanisms in South Africa, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? I've got Natalie in the background, and she's going to introduce herself in a moment, and she's going to be running the sort of the administrative side of the Zoom presentation. So Natalie, if you want to quickly introduce yourself, say hi to everybody, that'd be great.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie. I am the CRM manager. So I'm usually your first point of contact on your journey to becoming an INTRA licensee. I'm here to answer all of your initial questions and queries. So if you need anything, I'll drop my details in the chat box, but you should already have them. And yeah, thanks so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Natalie, can you switch your camera on so that everybody can see you? Because I know a number of people met you at AOSH recently, and there she is. And from the surname, you can see she's my daughter, and it's a family business. I'm actually waiting for Penny to arrive as well. She was out for the day, and hopefully she'll be able to pop in and she can introduce herself as well. So important that you know who we are. Just a little bit of background. I come out of a law enforcement background. I was a policeman for something like, wow, almost 12 years. Half of that was in the South African Police Force, in the drug squad, of all places, the narcotics bureau. And then the remainder of the time was in the South African Navy as a military policeman. And I moved from there into security. And while I was in security at a national key point, the safety officer resigned, and my general manager said to me, would I like to take his position? And I went, I'm not sure. What is it? And they introduced me to health and safety. Well, at that stage, it was just safety because it was the old Factories Act. And I was sent on a number of NOSA courses and eventually landed up working for NOSA for 5 years in the Western Cape, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was probably one of the nicest jobs I've ever had. Unfortunately, they didn't pay very well. But having said that, it gave me an opportunity of gathering a lot of experience, an enormous amount of experience, which was just so valuable. Then from there, I decided to set up a training company, and I started a company called INTRA Train, which was, I think, one of the first, if not the first, health and safety training company in South Africa. And that's all prior to the Machinery and Occupational Safety Act. And during the course of getting involved in the health and safety world, I was privileged enough to be the presenter of a number of training videos and so forth. And then from there, I had the opportunity of working with various people on the transition from the MOS Act, the Machinery and Occupational Safety Act, to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or OHSA as we know it now. So that's a little bit of a background. Penny and I were in the States about a dozen years ago, and we decided what we would do is, instead of just being the trainers to run training programs, we would assist people to set up their own training companies, specifically in the health and safety world, either training companies as independents and or training officers within companies that wanted to set up a training department. So that's a little bit of background, and I'm going to be talking about that in the presentation while Natalie lets people in. So let's get straight into it. Very important just to note that I'm not an attorney. I'm not an advocate. I have an interest in law, but I don't have a qualification in law. I spent a year at police college, but that didn't really qualify me to practice law in any which way or manner or means. But I enjoy it, and I like unpicking the legislation. We're really privileged today to have Advocate Reynard Luch with us on this presentation, and hopefully if there are things that I say that are not right, he will correct me. I have broad shoulders. I mentioned I'm an ex-policeman, so I don't mind the law. Okay, so having said that, I would like to ask that everybody make sure that you've got Natalie's business telephone number. You can just grab your phone and take a photo of that screen, and then please register it on your phone so that she can contact you and you can contact her, because there are a number of things that we'd like to give you more information and support and things of that nature. You'll also see that there is a chat box in the Zoom screen here, so please don't hesitate to write questions or anything like that in the chat box, and then we'll get back to you on that. So there's Penny. Penny and myself, we started this business about 12 years ago, and we currently have a network of licensees, as we call them, that stretch literally from Cape Town to Cairo. And the licensee program is similar to a franchise. However, it's not a franchise yet. It may very well become a franchise in the near future, but it's a network of experienced trainers that are qualified or registered and or certified and or verified and or accredited and all those wonderful words. Okay, now, a very important document to kick off with, and you can get this from Natalie and you can get it off our website, is our prospectus. And you can go online and you can actually just fill in a little form there, request more information. And the reason I'm going to say that is that I'm not going to be able to cover everything that's in the prospectus itself. And I'd really like you to get hold of that and get a copy so that you can work with that. Now, just before we started, I asked a couple of people what's their interest in health and safety. And some of them said, I want to set up a training business. I would like to start a training department. I would like to get involved in the training world. And it's important to note that there is a huge market in South Africa. We know that there's about 16.5 million people that are currently employed in South Africa. We have a population that's going on for 65 million, and we know that there's about 8.5 million people that are unemployed in terms of employable people, but are unemployed. So you can see from a training, educational, upliftment point of view, there's a massive, massive opportunity. Somebody asked me the question the other day and he said to me, but aren't you going to get to saturation point? And I went, please God, we get to saturation point. There is just so much scope and opportunity in the marketplace. So from a business point of view, I believe this is a good business to be in, and we'll talk more about that. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to take a piece of legislation, a very important piece of legislation, and just quickly unpick it. And this is Section 8, the duty of the employer. And I'm going to just abbreviate it. I extracted this so that you can see what Section 8 says. It says there, it doesn't say step 1 or 2. It's obviously got subsections there. But it says the employer must establish the hazards attached to the work performed. Blah, 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 blah. So the employer shall establish the hazards attached to the work performed. And those of you that are in health and safety will know that we talk about a thing called HIRA, Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment. And that's step 1. Once the employer knows what the hazards are, then it says that the employer shall establish the precautionary measures. And that would be something like a safe work procedure. And that hand in hand with knowing what the hazards are, then the employer must do the following point here. Step 3 says, now the employers provide information, instructions, training, and supervision. So there we can see. So imagine this. The employer identifies the hazards, dangers, and risks, then establishes the precautionary measures and safe work procedures, and then writes that into the relevant information, instruction, or training sessions. Now that is really the way we have to go about doing health and safety. And then it says the employer must also provide the necessary supervision of somebody who's been trained to understand these hazards. Okay, so having said that, we then jump to Section 13, and it says here the employer must cause every employee to be made conversant. And, if one thinks along the lines, I just said that it's almost 17 million people, employed people, whether self-employed or full-time employment, 17 million people need to be trained, because it says the employer must cause every employee that works for them to be made conversant. An interesting word. And conversant obviously means that the person is able to speak about the topic where they've just attended an information or an instruction or a training session. Conversant means I can speak Afrikaans, but Afrikaans is nie te sleg nie, but ndifunde isiXhosa. I'm still learning to speak isiXhosa. I'm not conversant in isiXhosa. So you understand the difference there. And then this employee must also be familiar with the precautions that need to be taken. Remember in Section 8, the employer must determine the precautionary measures, and now the employee must be familiar with these precautions. Now, having said that, then we ask the question, what else? Well, the legislation, in my opinion, is written and favors the training sector. There is an enormous amount of requirement throughout this entire act, all 50 sections, and then the, what's it about, 20 odd regulations where it talks about training. And I'm going to quickly touch on one of the regulations, which I think that you might find interesting. It's the ergonomics regulation. And in section 3 of the ergonomics regulation, it uses those terms inform, instruct, and train once again. Now, the ergonomics regulation came out in 2019, 2020, around about the same time as COVID. And what most people have yet to do is to read it. And I know that sounds really, really quite something. It's like, why have people not taken this seriously? Because have a look at what it says. The ergonomics regulation says that the employer must conduct the training contemplated in sub-regulation 1 prior to the placement of the relevant employee. So if I read that, and I've just extracted that straight from the legislation or from the regulation. Now, a question that often comes up is who should do the training? Well, there it is. It says the employer must. The employer must conduct the training. Now, it's not possible for the employer to conduct the training if they're busy running the business. So what they are able to do is they're able to have a surrogate or a freelance person or a trainer conduct the training on their behalf. So that's prior to the placement. That's interesting. Then it says that the employer must conduct refresher training. That's interesting. Now, if you're going to get into the training business, please note, refresher training is good for business. And then it says at intervals recommended by the Health and Safety Committee or a representative. Now, remember in section 8, it says the employer must identify the hazards. And based on that, then the employees must be trained in ergonomics and then refresher training. And then it carries on. And it actually says in section regulation 3, it talks about what the training must cover. Now, I'm using this as an example just to point out that there's wonderful opportunities for people to actually do training in these areas. Now, what is also really a bit scary or a little bit interesting is that the Department of Higher Education and the Department of Employment and Labor seemingly did not chat to each other when it came to the ergonomics regulation because there is no unit standard. And those of you that are familiar with unit standards will know unit standards are written for and on behalf of SETA accredited training companies so that they could run training programs according to those unit standards. And those of you that are following the transition from the SETAs to the QCTO, you will probably be shocked to hear that the QCTO still hasn't written a code, they're calling them codes and curriculum, for ergonomics. Now, there was a unit standard for ergonomic risk assessors, but in June of 2023, all the unit standards were cancelled. Then there was an outcry, and the Department of Higher Education and SAQA then reinstated some of the unit standards. Difficult to find out exactly which ones are reinstated. There's a website you can go onto. Then at the same time in June of 2023, the SAQA and Higher Education instructed that there will be no more accreditation via the SETAs. All the accreditation would now have to go through QCTO, which is fine. However, the problem with that was that, or is that QCTO does not have codes or curriculum. That's crazy. Okay, there's more information on that, and I can provide you with a lot more information on that discussion. But so how does an employee get trained, or how does an employer have the employee trained if there's no unit standard and you cannot get accredited or accreditation for the training? Okay, a bit of a quandary, and hopefully they'll be able to sort that out in due course. Now, if you look at dangers, hazards, and risks in the workplace, the employer must identify the hazards, it said, and these are some of the topics that could come up where an employee needs training. Have a look at that list. It's massive. It's huge. I mean, it's the amount of training that needs to take place in the health and safety world. The sad thing is that there are no QCTO codes or curricula for these topics other than first aid. That's it. There's nothing. At the level that we need it, and we operate in the short course industry, the 1, 2, 3 day courses, the low credits, the 2, 3, 4 credit courses, and there's nothing. So what do we do? Well, I tell you what we do. We say in the absence of that, conduct legal compliance training. The law says do the training, so do the training. Do the training either as an employer or on behalf of the employer. And that's exactly our business model. And that's what we do. We've developed a whole host of training programs, which we will regard just as legal compliance programs. And I will give you or at least Natalie will give you the catalog of all the programs that we've got. We've got 25 programs all told. And there's more in development. I'm working on the 26th at the moment. So these programs can be run as legal compliance. So in the event of a prosecution taking place and the prosecutor asking the question, did you train the people? And the answer is, yes, I did. Was it accredited? No, it can't be. As crazy as that sounds. Okay, so having said that, let's move on. There is a catalog, and in the catalog, there's a lot of information in terms of what's in the course material, and you can get that from Natalie. You can just literally WhatsApp her and say, please send me, or you can email her and she'll send you the information. Now, just out of interest, all of the training programs that we've got, all 25, are also available online via our website, and they come with facilitator guides and learner guides and PowerPoints and things like that. Okay. And you can pay for them online, which is nice and simple, and then delivery takes place via Google Drive. Now, what if we don't do this? Well, there's a possibility that one could land up in court, and if convicted, there is a possibility of a fine of 50,000 Rand. And it'd be interesting to hear Advocate Luch's commentary on this one. And then we also know that in the offing, one day is one day. They've been talking about this since, in my opinion, my knowledge, since about 2014, the amendment bill, the Occupational Health and Safety Act Amendment Bill. Renard, if you want to quickly chip in over here, I would really appreciate a little bit of commentary, and I'll shut up for a moment.
Yes, thank you, Ken. You're spot on. I couldn't have said it better. The focus on your the risk assessment, the assessment of hazards, precautionary measures, and training. And interestingly enough, there's been a recent court case against a civil case as opposed to a criminal prosecution, emanating from a person who did not receive adequate training at one of the companies, the motor industry companies in PE. And you may ask me, why are you talking about a civil matter where you sue for damages or compensation as opposed to a prosecution? The reason is that OHS Act criminal matters are heard in the lower courts, normally the regional court, and they don't generate law reports unless they go on appeal, obviously, to the High Court, and there's still no guarantee then. So normally these civil courts, if you're going to sue, you reach for the stars, don't you? You don't want to sue for a minimal amount, and of course that will fall within the High Court's jurisdiction. So I have a very interesting case study, recent one. Although it's civil, it amplifies, Ken, everything you said about, although this focus in this particular High Court case was on a lack of training, it would obviously lack of training into precautionary measures. You may ask, why is a worker suing one of the companies in the motor industry? Because Section 35 of the COID Act is actually a statutory indemnity. If you contribute to the fund as an employer, your employees can't sue the company or top management. And the reason for this successful lawsuit was that this worker was supplied by a labor broker. So we have the strange situation in our law that if you use the services of a labor broker, the labor broker contributes to the fund, is therefore the employer of the worker.
Right.
The moment the worker sets foot at the workplace, in terms of the OHS Act, he's the employee of the employer. So that's just an interesting tangent. Ken, a recent it's on my website, the court case. It did generate a law report, and we're very hungry for law reports. As I say, we get nothing out of the criminal OHS matters, but we look to civil matters where the OHS Act is referenced, or health or safety or training, etc. Thanks, Ken.
Interesting, interesting. So many nuances to the legislation that we really need to get to grips with. And graciously, Advocate Luch has indicated to us that he would provide our licensees with a better insight into the Occupational Health and Safety Act as a process of developing them and their knowledge. So, Renard, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so we see that there are penalties, and obviously we need to make sure that the employer doesn't land up in court, and then even more importantly, that the employee doesn't land up in hospital. I mean, that's the whole purpose behind this occupational health and safety thing. Now, we see in the legislation as well that certain standards have been established, and those standards include this thing called competency. And I'm sure you're familiar with competency. You see it come up from time to time. It's actually a word that comes up first and foremost in the Occupational Health and Safety Act and regulations, and secondly, in SAQA, SETA, NQF, QCTO. So it's almost like SETA, SAQA, NQF, QCTO have hijacked the word from the department or from the legislation, and they use it. And there's a lot of discussion as to what a competent person is. But the way to find out what sort of level of training that needs to take place is you have a look at the regulation, and you'll see that in about 10 of the regulations that they talk about competency. The most common ones are the general safety regs, the driven machinery regs, the construction regs, and the ergonomics regulations. And those are the common ones. We know them to be there. And we also know that in some instances, the Department of Employment and Labor needs to approve training, as well as the organization that's providing the training needs to be accredited. Now, there are a number of other regulations there. Most of those would not apply to you. However, we see in the draft construction regulations something has cropped up now. And those of you that are following that, you'll see that the definition of competent person in the draft regulations has changed. It's not the same as the other regulations. And they've taken out a paragraph that said, provided that where appropriate qualifications and training are registered in terms of the NQF Act, those qualifications and that training must be regarded as the required qualification and training. Now, I'm not sure why. It'd be very interesting to find out why. But I had a discussion with somebody this very morning who was saying that the site agent at a construction site insisted that the training has to be accredited. And we go, why? If the law doesn't require accreditation. And then secondly, how? If there is no or are no mechanisms to get accreditation. And it's a debate, and it's almost like a bit of a fixation where everybody's fixated with this idea of has to be accredited. Well, first and foremost, if the law says it must be accredited, then obviously we can't argue with that. But sometimes people write into their own understanding of the legislation their own opinions, which I don't think is a particularly healthy thing to do. Okay, having said that, let's just carry on. I want to see here, just seem to, what happened there? I apologize. Okay. There is a document that came out from the Department of Employment and Labor on a competent person. And one of the interesting things about competency here, and this is important if you want to be involved in the health and safety training world. In this document that came from the department, on page 2, it says that the employer must declare somebody competent, not a training company. Not an accredited training company. The employer must declare the person competent. Interesting, just as an aside. Okay, now, we're saying that we'll help you get up and running and set up your own training business. Now, obviously, there are certain topics which you may not be familiar with, such as ergonomics, as an example. And with the ergonomics training program, we've got an e-learning program. We've got 18 e-learning programs with the primary focus of orientating trainers or facilitators or instructors in the subject matter. And then also we provide it as a mechanism for you to generate income. So if your clients actually attend these programs, Penny, our financial director, will then share some of the proceeds, 50% of the proceeds with you. So a good example there is you want to run a session on information session or instruction session on ergonomics, attend the e-learning program, and it's a regular e-learning program, and eventually lands up with a certificate. Then watch the video that was shot it's a Zoom video where Dale Kennedy, the ergonomist, he's one of South Africa's leading ergonomists, he recorded it with us. And now you have a little bit of information as to, okay, now I know a little bit about the topic. I've been through the e-learning program. I've watched Dale's videos, and we then recommend that you run a pilot program. And you can do a talk on ergonomics just to kick off and get going on that topic. So these are the sort of methodologies that we will use on an ongoing basis to help you and or your instructors get up and running. Now, lastly, I just want to mention that we've currently got 18 programs, and we bundle them together. And once you've completed all 18, you will receive a certificate from us called the HASMAN. And the HASMAN, the Health and Safety Management Program, is the development of a platform so that you can eventually, Lord willing and hopefully, get credits for it, and you will then be able to submit it as part of your CV or your prospectus and so forth. Okay, now, giving you a whole story here, but what I want to do is I want to say this. We then decided that what we would do is not just supply the training material and the support. We would bundle it together in a way that we would assist you, hold your hand, mentor you, coach you in the running of a business. And that has resulted in us creating this licensing business. And we talk about the licensing, and we've got 4 different licenses. And I see this image is covering up the script there. But we've got 4 different licenses. We have a starter license, we have a beginner license, we have our prime license, and then we have a platinum license. So starter is literally just that, people getting going. And you'll find all the details in our prospectus. Then there is a basic license, and the difference between basic and prime is basic does not include any of the QCTO material and or our training, QCTO training. And then the prime license does. That covers the very important aspect of how to get accreditation from the QCTO. And the platinum license is a license for large corporates, multinationals, and so forth. Okay. Now, together with that, you get 25 training programs that I listed earlier on, and another 50 former SAQA unit standard aligned training materials. And in the prospectus, you'll see there's a list of all the programs. And while I said that most of these unit standards have been cancelled, the training material remains good, which means that if we were to dump that training material, you would not be able to run certain courses, or at least this way, you can run them, and then you can modify them. Now, we do know, as a result of these changes that have taken place, is that the QCTO is now taking over from SETA. Unfortunately, it's taking a long time, a particularly long time. Remember I mentioned June 2023. That's when they cancelled it all. And by that stage, we hoped that the QCTO would have their act together and they would just slot into place and we'd be able to carry on with the QCTO. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And at the moment, it feels almost as if the QCTO are spinning the wheels in the sand. Now, the QCTO is an important part of our educational system in South Africa to uplift employees or prospective employees. And QCTO stands for Quality Council for Trades and Occupations. And their system works similar to this: qualifications and skills programs. Now, qualifications are basically a college. And skills programs are 1, 2, and 3 day courses, these short courses, information sessions or instruction sessions or training sessions. And those short courses are literally, in some instances, just legal compliance. However, they've now, unfortunately, they've made it fairly cumbersome. And even if you want to run a health and safety representative training program, you will have to register as a college, which seems a bit excessive. In fact, rather excessive. Okay. Having said that, what they have done is that they've come up with 3 short courses or skills programs for first aid. And there's a whole history to the first aid thing. Previously, we'd have General Safety Regulation 3, level 1, 2, and 3 courses. Then somewhere along the line, they decided to shift all of that to SAQA and to QCTO, to SETA. And the Department of Higher Education just moved it across. There was no discussion. It was a fait accompli. You will change. So we rewrote training material and got accreditation and things like that. And then more recently, so June last year, they went, no, that's not good enough anymore. Now we're going to be doing QCTO training. And they wrote these training programs, which they in themselves are not bad. However, they're flawed. And there are gaps in the training program. In particular, one of the things that troubles us is the fact that they completely misquote legislation, completely, in as much as they talk of a Regulation 7, first aid training kit, and in any case. Now, these are the things that we'll assist you with if you decide you want to become a licensee and you want to provide training. It's important that you know about, but not get all bent and twisted about it. This is something that you can do. And the Afrikaans have a nice word, this doenbaar. This is all doable, and we'll assist you with that. Now, to get your accreditation, we're going to show you how to actually apply for it yourself, because accreditation has become very expensive. But before we talk about that, let me just say to you that the QCTO has been working in the background. And Penny and I had the privilege of serving on a QCTO work group. And in the work group, we identified a number of training programs that we felt would be appropriate. And we then made recommendations to the HWSETA, who is the quality partner that the QCTO is working with. And they came up, and I'm saying we made recommendations. They didn't listen in all instances. They came up with these courses and some of these strange terms. In any case, having said that, the first one is an intermediate OHS compliance insurer. Well, when we first heard that, we went, what the heck is that? So I'm going to just simply define that as legal compliance or legal liability, understanding the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And you'll notice that they have different levels. They have intermediate, they have advanced, and they have essential. So strange terms that they're using there. Now, the ones in red are the ones that we feel will help us enormously to make progress in the health and safety training world. The others, not just yet, but we'll get there. In the meantime, what we've been doing, what INTRA's been doing, is we've been writing training material to address these topics. And when they publish, they being QCTO, when they publish the curriculum and the codes, then our training material will be aligned to the curriculum and code, and you will then receive that training material so that you could actually go ahead and do accredited training. Now, they promised us, and I'm saying they, once again, QCTO said this would be done in June of 2025. Now, June has come and gone. We're already into July, and let's see where we go with that. But in the meantime, what do we do? And this is a very important thing. You do legal compliance training, that the employer complies with the legislative requirements. Now, here are another 15 programs that they're going to be working at or on. Some of them we feel are very, very important, and others we go, what is that? Not too sure. But in any case, we'll get some clarity on that as we go. Now, for you as a training provider, let me say this. This is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're moving in the right direction. And for you to get accreditation means, from a marketing point of view and a sales point of view, that you'll be able to be a credible organization providing good training in the workplace for your clients or your employees. And this is important. I mentioned these hiccups because it is important to know that this is what you're going to be dealing with as you go along. However, our primary job is to make sure that you know and understand what it is that you're dealing with, and you can make sense of it, and of course that you can then promote the training to your clients. Okay, so we're still waiting for the QCTO to give us some feedback on these subjects, but I'm sure we'll get this soon. They've indicated that it'll be any day now. Alrighty, so having said all of that, now the point is, what do we do in the meantime? Well, legal compliance training. Once again, you still got to do the training. The employer still needs to have the training done. And once the training has been done, you can issue a certificate of attendance, not competency, but attendance. And that would then legitimize the process, and your training would be acceptable to the client. Do note that you cannot issue a certificate of competency given the fact that it's in the legislation, those regulations. And of course, we also don't want to infringe or overstep the mark as far as QCTO is concerned. Okay, so when we started on this journey a good 10 years ago, we got accreditation with the FP&M SETA, that's the Fiber Processing Manufacturing SETA. And the reason for that was that I was very involved in the print industry and then later on in the forestry industry. And that's FP&M, Fiber Processing and Manufacturing. And we got our accreditation with them. Unfortunately, they've not renewed accreditation. So what we then needed to do is we needed to find a way around it. Now, to get our accreditation those days cost us about, I think Penny said the other day, about, this is then 10 years ago, 35,000 Rand just to get accreditation. And with all these changes that have taken place, one of the good things that's happened with QCTO is that it's a lot easier. They've simplified it. They brought it online. It's more logical. The response times are way, way, way better. So we also saw that the QCTO have said that they do not want to deal with consultants. And we used a consultant. This lady was absolutely brilliant. She really was excellent. But now we're saying, why don't we teach you, our licensee, to get your own accreditation? And this applies to those who opt for prime license and platinum license. We have a pack of documents. There's about 60 documents in this pack. And the pack, we call it the AccrediKit, is something that Penny will unpack with you and literally take it apart, show you what's in it, help you fill in the forms, and then show you how to get your online application in place. She does a workshop on a monthly basis where you and your team can attend. It doesn't matter how many people from a company can attend. That's great. Just come along so that you know and understand how to do it. Now, there's another really good reason you want to do this, is that QCTO said accreditation isn't a one-off activity. Accreditation, you would need to apply for accreditation for every single one of those independent curricula once they've been written above the number 5. So from 0 to 5, that's one application. The next 5 to 10 or 6 to 10, another application. 10 to 15, and we know that in the health and safety world, you could have up to 20 different programs that you're accredited for. And that becomes very expensive. You're paying 35,000, 40,000 Rand for that. And we just said, no, we'll teach you how. Now, I see the date over there. I should have fixed that this morning. My apologies. It says the 12th of June, but it'll be around about the 12th of July. I can assure you of that. And the way that you come on the program is you just let Penny know or Natalie know that you'd like to attend as a prime licensee, and they'll put you on the program, you and your team. So the last line over there is that the QCTO is also now they introduced a tariff. And that tariff for applications, every single application would then be an initial tariff of 6,000 Rand, and then a tariff of 1,300 Rand thereafter. So for the first application, 6,000, for the remaining 5, or the remainder of the 5, 1,300, I think it is, and so forth and so forth. And then the last thing that I'll just quickly mention is that when it comes to QCTO, this does not include the Department of Employment and Labor's fee, because they still charge a fee of 400 Rand so that you can become an approved first aid instructor. And it does not include the certificate cost. So I know if I had to get by way of training and education, I'm an audiometrist, or was an audiometrist years and years and years ago. If I wanted a copy of my certificate, I'd have to pay for that. I understand that. So what the QCTO is saying, that all certificates issued by the QCTO will be 148 Rand at this stage, right now, if you want a certificate. So it becomes quite expensive. Just bear that in mind. So you would need to cost all of this into your pricing and make sure that you are you're going to make a profit out of this. And we'll talk more about that. Okay, so having said that, now part of the process, the accreditation process, is a site visit. And they're going to come along. They send a verifier, and the verifier will come and see whether you've got all your documents in place, whether you've got the training material in place, whether your venue has a health and safety certificate as such. They will ask questions like, who owns that equipment? Is it yours? Is it somebody else's? Have you borrowed it? Have you rented it? Things of that nature. Your venue, from a safety point of view and a convenience point of view, is it up to standard? So Penny will share that with you and share lots of photographs. And these photographs are from our licensees that have already got their accreditation. Okay, now that means that you've now got the mechanism in place. Let's just quickly talk about a couple of last things here before we wrap up. When we get you up and running as a licensee, we also regard you as new to the world of business. So we have a ops manual, and we have a monthly orientation session. We have an onboarding right at the beginning. We have ongoing mentorship. So if you need information on whatever, and right now we're talking about taxation, you can speak to Penny. Penny is incredibly well connected. Her nickname is Money Penny, like the James Bond character, and she knows stuff which most of us don't know. And she's been in small business longer than I have, and she really knows it. Now, in the orientation sessions, we also talk about finance and admin and legal. We talk about advertising and marketing and promotions, and we talk about sales, and we talk about things of that nature so that you can grow your business. Because ultimately what you want to do is your business should become an asset. An asset is something that generates money. A liability is something that costs you money. So our primary focus is to make or to provide you with as much assistance as possible so you can make a decent living. And then one day, maybe you want to bequeath the business to your family, or to appoint a manager, or maybe even to sell the business. And with all of these things in mind, it's important to note it is a business. And in South Africa, it is a lucrative business. You can really make a decent living for yourself and your family by running a health and safety training company and doing it properly with all your ducks in a row and so forth. We have an ops manual that we'll work through, and then, of course, we'll also take you through a process of helping you set up your online marketing. I'm going to ask Natalie to just quickly talk about it. Natalie has a degree in media from UCT, and she's worked for a number of advertising agencies in the social media space. Nats, can you quickly take over and just chat about your service here?
Yeah, sure. So in the basic and the prime license, what's included is an online marketing presence setup. And this is really just to help you get that boost, get some visibility and credibility in terms of being on a couple of platforms that we suggest. If you already have a presence, then I do a digital marketing audit and I give you some consultation in terms of what you can do to improve your visibility. But a lot of the times we find if you are expanding into training, you wanting to get that part of your business set up in terms of its online presence. And so I just fill that gap for you. And I give you a whole bunch of resources and a rollout plan in terms of how you can get going with your digital marketing moving forward.
Thanks, Natalie. And Natalie's done this for dozens of our licensees, which is really important to note. So we've dealt with a couple of issues as we go through the process. One of the things she does not do is she doesn't build websites. If you do need a website, you can chat to her, or then obviously you have somebody else that does that for your organization. But it means that you can get up and running as quickly as possible, because the name of the game here is sales. Sales, marketing, advertising, and promotions. And you know this, I know this, that if you don't sell, you're not going to make any money. It's as simple as that. And for a business that doesn't have a marketing strategy, it's going to be really difficult to get off the ground unless you happen to be particularly popular. All right, having said that, that's an important aspect. I'm going to move on. Then we talk about what else do we do? Well, we're constantly developing new products. The next training program that we're going to be doing is on stacking and storage. How did we arrive at that topic? A request. I've had a couple of people saying, please, do you have anything on stacking and storage? I've got a number of topics here that I'll be writing training material. And if I can't, then we have a team. We have a number of people that will work with us and have worked with us in the past, and they will write this training material at an international standard. And you're then able to take this training material and you're able to modify it. Together with that, we do webinars such as this. Some of these webinars are particularly useful. You'll see that there is a webinar over there, Introduction to AI. And we ran a very successful workshop on AI and artificial intelligence and so forth. And then, of course, we ran workshops on the amendment bill right in the beginning when there was much discussion around that. We talk about various aspects, such as the HIRA program. You'll notice that what we did there is we actually ran a webinar where we unpacked the training material, showed you how to customize it, showed you how to add in, showed you how to modify the training material that would meet your specific client's needs or your client's risk profile, and so forth. Then, of course, you will see there's a program called BFAR. That's a bit strange. That's the Basic Emergency First Aid Responder Program. That's the level 1 program that came out from the QCTO. So it's not just a matter of that we flog you some training material and go, good luck. We'll work with you wherever possible. And then right at the bottom, on the left-hand side bottom corner, you'll see there's a video that we recorded and a webinar that we ran on this transition from SETA to QCTO. And it's important for you to know so that you can explain to your clients what it's all about. So I have people saying to me, and you hear, they say, my client says, is it accredited? And my first question is, why? And they go, well, it must be accredited so that they can get BEE points. Not at all. Not at all. There's a government gazette that came out, and we'll show you the reference, where the Department of Trade and Industry says there's no BEE or triple B, double E points, scorecard points for regulatory training. Nothing. And most employers don't know that. They think that they're going to get their BEE points. And then the next one is that they think, well, if we do accredited training, then we'll be able to claim our skills development levy rebate back. And it's important for you to know and be able to explain to your clients that the way that mechanism works, it's really quite strange. It's strange in as much as for the past 15 years or so, the SARS or the legislators have said that employers must contribute 1% of their salary bill. If the annual salary bill is over 500,000 Rand, 1% goes to SARS. SARS then takes 80% of that and sends it to the relevant SETAs. You can then claim mandatory and or discretionary grants from the SETAs once the training has been done. What you don't know and may not know is that for the past 15 years, on average, employers contribute about anything between 12 and 18 billion Rand, billion with a B, billion. I'm shocked, even as I said. And last year, apparently, employers in a depressed economic environment contributed over 20 billion Rand. Now, sad to say that we still have this huge gap in the marketplace as far as training is concerned. And it's sadder to say that the health and safety world or industry seems to have received the very, very, very last bit of support. And that's why we don't have these codes and curriculum and things like that. Okay, so having said that, it's a good thing to know and understand that when you're sitting with your client, that you can explain to them what's going on. And then, of course, also to shed some light on it, to say there's hope, things are starting to happen, and if they know and understand how to do that, that's really good. And when I say do that, as in claim the skills development levies back. Okay, but last point that I'll make on this one is that the contribution of 1%, if you're a small organization with a salary bill of 500,000 Rand, it's not a major amount of money. But if you have a salary bill of maybe 50 million Rand, 1% of 50 million, and you can claim 20% of that 1% back. Just do the numbers. And that's why a lot of clients go, it's not worth it. It's just not worth all the time and effort and energy. And we'll talk about that. And we'll provide you with information so that you can explain to your client or put your client's minds at rest. All right, that's what this is all about. Now, we also have an amazing network opportunity, is that we have licensees literally from Cape Town to Cairo, and in a lot of the African countries, we have representation in Nigeria, we have in Angola, we have in Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, where else? In Guinea, we have people there that are using our training material. Now, the reason I mention this is that whether you're in Cape Town, Joburg, Durban, PE, Welkom, Bloemfontein, Mangaung, or someplace like that, the important thing is that you might not find it or deem it profitable to drive to Bloemfontein to run a training program. But in Bloemfontein, there is already a licensee. And you can liaise with them and collaborate with them, and they will then do the training on your behalf according to your standards. How about that? It means that almost immediately you have close to 200 people that you can call on. And some of them are specialists. And I'm saying specialists. We have In our midst of licensees, we have doctors, medical doctors. We have an attorney. We have a former not chief inspector, sorry, a Department of Employment and Labor inspector. We have a number of ex-NOSA people that are now licensees, and you can take advantage of this incredible network of people. Okay, so having said that, now it's a question of saying, right, which one would suit us? And we'll then provide you with lots of useful information. I'm going to ask Natalie just to talk through the costings while I have a sip of water. Natalie, over to you.
Sure. So our platinum license has a once-off fee of 105,500. All prices are exclusive of that. We usually like to set up a one-on-one meeting just so that we can ascertain what your needs are, and then from there we can quote you accordingly. But that is the starting price for our platinum license, and it has an annual license fee as well. Our prime license, our most popular license, is 49,500 upfront fee. And the Prime Plus option, which gives you full management of your accreditation, that's 69,500, and that has a monthly fee of 1,500 per month. The basic license has an upfront fee of 29,500 and a monthly fee of 1,500 per month. And our starter bundle has an upfront fee of 15,500 and a monthly license fee of 500 per month. We also sell our training material individually, and you can build your library one at a time, and we sell that for 2,604 Rand, which is 2,995 inclusive of that.
Fantastic. Natalie, thank you so much. Okay, just to put things into perspective, you're looking at those pricings and you think, oh, wow, okay, essentially what you're getting is a franchise. You're getting a license arrangement in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. And if you were to go and buy a business anywhere else, you would inevitably probably be charged in the millions. Now, here it gives you an opportunity of getting up and running as quickly and as easily as possible without an excessive amount of financial burden on yourself. But it also is important to note that all the expenses in terms of setting up a company are and is tax deductible. So know that it's really something where it is an investment. And if you do this properly, you'll create an asset, as I mentioned, and you'll be able to sell that asset, or you'll be able to bequeath that asset, or you'll be able to grow that asset. And our training company, our original training company, had 20 staff members, and we operate in Cape Town, Durban, and Joburg. And those centers meant that we could grow it even further, because then you can start going into other provinces and places like that. So it's very exciting, very, very exciting. It's a lovely business opportunity, we believe. And then the last thing that I'll just mention to you is that because it's a business, we're going to treat you like a business owner. We're going to expect you to do a certain amount of your own research as to how to run a small business profitably. Very important. And then, of course, if you get stuck anywhere along the lines or would like some advice, we're available to talk to you and assist you. And if not us, we are well connected. We have a phenomenal group of people that support us, and our accountants and our attorney, and people that will be of assistance to you as well. Okay, all of that information is in the prospectus, and that's why I said right in the beginning, please get a copy of the prospectus, and Natalie will be able to provide it to you. And then I'm going to ask you to do something which is just quite simple. Please print it. And I say print and prepare, and then book a one-on-one Zoom meeting if you would like more information. Now, that's either for yourself, and it would be with Penny and myself, and we will spend some time with you on Zoom via a Zoom scheduler, or alternatively for your management team within your organization. We'll happily do this presentation and or other explanations so that you're fully informed and aware of what you're getting into and the opportunities that are there. I just want to start wrapping up by saying this, that we'd like to provide you with some formal information, such as a quotation. So if you send Natalie a message to that WhatsApp number, 082 499 6911, that's 082 499 6911, or you can go onto our website, which is at the bottom there, intrasafe.co.za, request more information. You can just click on the button, fill in the form, and then Natalie will get back to you. So at this stage, I'm just watching the time. I don't want to belabor the point. I like to stick to the time wherever possible. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I see that there's a nice group of people that have actually joined us. Natalie's got all the names, and I'm sure that there might be some questions that you'd like to ask. So on the hour, I'm going to stop the recording, and then we're just going to open the microphones and have any questions that you might like to ask. If I can't answer them now, we'll get back to you and see if we can answer them at a later stage. So bearing in mind that it is a dynamic world that we live in, and we know that in South Africa, there's all kinds of things happening in the education department and the education sphere. And we know that this specific world, the health and safety world, is great from a business point of view because it's legislated. You have to do training if you're an employer, or have your employees trained. It's lovely. I absolutely love that. And you can take advantage of that. And if you're good at it, you can then make a name for yourself. I'm going to end off just by saying that we have a brilliant opportunity, and we've worked with SIOSH, the South African Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And I've had the privilege of actually chairing some of their conferences and speaking at some of their conferences. And so can you. And we'll teach you, we'll show you, we'll guide you, we'll stimulate some thinking and say, this is how you can grow your business. So with that in mind, I want to just quickly wrap up. I want to say thank you so much to everybody that's joined us. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to quickly just pin myself so that it goes nice and big. And then say, it's going to be open mic in a couple of minutes' time, in 2 minutes' time, and you can ask whatever questions you'd like to ask. I trust that you found this interesting. I trust that you are sufficiently stimulated and have maybe a couple of questions that you've written down already. And I trust that once you printed out the prospectus and drawn up a list of questions, that we will have a nice interactive session directly after that. So I'm going to hand over to Natalie, just ask for a quick wrap up from her side. If there's anything that she needs, and then I'm going to stop the recording, and then we're going to go on to open mic. Natalie, over to you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I've dropped my details in the chat. So if you need anything at all, please feel free to send me a WhatsApp or an email. I've also dropped the link to request a prospectus or a quote. We just ask that you go via the link provided because we have a whole system in place for that. And if there is anything else that you need, if you want to set up a meeting, a one-on-one meeting with Ken after having looked at the prospectus, just send me a WhatsApp and we can arrange that accordingly. Now we can open the floor to your questions.
Great, absolutely. And I know that South Africa is cold at the moment, and I can see Natalie sitting there with the heater in the background, I'm sure. And right, okay. So let's wrap up. Thank you so much for everybody and your participation. We look forward to being of service to you and looking after your needs and seeing if we can help you set up a profitable, effective, efficient health and safety training business. So from Penny's not here, but from Penny, myself, and Natalie, thank you very much. All the best then. We will see you on the other side once I've switched off the recording.